Markeith Loyd. Loyd shot and killed his ex-girlfriend and her unborn child in December 2016. Loyd was on the run for killing Dixon when a shopper at a Walmart spotted him on January 9, 2017. The shopper notified Clayton, who was also at the store, and she attempted to stop him. Clayton, 42, was killed during a shootout with Loyd outside the store. He was arrested days later. Loyd was convicted in October 2019 of multiple charges in the murder of pregnant ex-girlfriend Sade Dixon. He avoided the death penalty in that case after a jury recommended a life sentence. Markeith Loyd, convicted of the murder of Deborah Clayton, was sentenced to death by a Florida judge. The sentence, handed down by Ninth Circuit Judge Letitia Marquez, came nearly 3 months after a jury recommended the death penalty in Loyd's case and more than 5 years after Clayton was killed in the line of duty. Clayton, 42, was a master sergeant in the police department at the time of her death and was posthumously promoted to lieutenant. Dante Morris. Dante Morris will be sentenced to life in prison for the 2010 murder of Derek Anderson, but will remain on death row for killing 2 Tampa police officers. In court, Assistant State Attorney Scott Harmon announced that the state will allow Morris to be resentenced to life in prison for the Anderson murder. The move comes after a recent Florida Supreme Court decision which concluded that death sentences cannot be reinstated in cases where a jury was not unanimous. A jury voted 10-2 in favor of the death penalty for Morris in his 2015 trial for the Anderson murder. A separate jury in 2014 voted 12-0 to give Morris death for killing officers David Curtis and Jeffrey Cockab. Anderson, 21, was shot in the back on May 18, 2010, outside his mother's East Tampa apartment. He was returning home after doing laundry at a friend's house and carried a load of clean clothing in a backpack. At trial, the state said that Morris killed Anderson after the 2 men had argued earlier that day about Anderson selling marijuana on what Morris considered to be his turf. The murder occurred more than a month before Morris killed Curtis and Cockab. The officers had stopped a car in which Morris was a passenger early on the morning of June 29, 2010. They discovered Morris had a warrant when they moved to arrest him. Morris pulled a gun and shot both officers in their heads. He disappeared into a nearby neighborhood and touched off the largest manhunt in Tampa history. He was arrested a few days later. At the time of Morris's trials, state law allowed a judge to impose a death sentence based on a recommendation from a bare majority of jurors. Humberto Delgado. Humberto Delgado, 40, who once worked as a police officer in his native Virgin Islands, was sentenced to death in 2012. At his trial, doctors testified about Delgado's history of delusions and psychotic behavior. All diagnosed him with bipolar disorder with varying degrees of psychosis. Their examinations revealed that in his early adulthood, Delgado was plagued by a belief that police were out to kill him and that people were following him and sitting in trees outside his home. He also told his family that he had to cut off his children's legs because they were goat legs and they were evil. He was known to wander the streets at night, saying that demons, the Masons, and the rapper 50 Cent were trying to kill him. In August 2009, Tampa Police Department Corporal Michael Roberts was patrolling on Nebraska Avenue in an area that had seen a lot of break-ins. He stopped Humberto Delgado, who he saw acting strange and pushing a shopping cart. During the stop, Delgado ran and pulled a gun, attacking Corporal Roberts, pistol whipping him and then firing a shot, killing the officer. The Florida Supreme Court has overturned the death sentence of Humberto Delgado, who was convicted of gunning down Tampa Police Corporal Mike Roberts in 2009. In an opinion issued Thursday, a unanimous court ruled that Delgado's extreme mental illness, coupled with the circumstances of the crime, made a death sentence disproportionate as compared with other murder cases. The court sent the case back to the circuit court, where Delgado will be resentenced to life in prison with no chance of release. Ashford Thompson. Ashford Thompson shot Officer Joshua McTarian 4 times in the head at close range after Thompson had been stopped for playing loud music in his car. In the High Court's close decision on the death sentence, Justice William M. O'Neill, who wrote one of the dissenting opinions, called the circumstances surrounding the fatal shooting a routine traffic stop gone tragically wrong. O'Neill said in his dissent that there were not sufficient aggravating factors to outweigh points of significant weight on Thompson's behalf. The court's conclusion that Thompson shot McTarian to avoid being detected, apprehended or punished, O'Neill wrote, is pure fiction. O'Neill used the trial testimony of Thompson's girlfriend, Danielle Robertson, who was in his car and witnessed the shooting, to challenge the majority opinion that Thompson killed the officer to escape responsibility for his actions. Robertson testified that McTarian was aggressive towards Thompson, yelled at him from the beginning of the encounter, then slapped a handcuff on him and threatened to let his dog out on Thompson only moments after Thompson got out his car. Thompson was sentenced to death and is currently on death row. Quentin Smith. Eric During and Anthony Tony Morelli were police officers who were murdered on February 10, 2018 in Westerville, Ohio, after responding to a domestic violence incident. During, 39, and Morelli, 54, were shot and killed by Quentin Smith, who had punched and choked his wife, leading to her making a 911 hang-up call. When the police officers arrived, Smith shot During 3 times in both of his arms and in his head. Morelli was shot once in the chest with the bullet going through his heart and lungs. During, who had been a police officer for 16 years in Westerville, died at the scene, while Morelli, who had been a police officer for 30 years, died later in the hospital. Smith, who was 30 at the time and who was prohibited from having a gun, was shot 5 times, but survived. After the murders, Smith was taken to the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center, where he stayed for 8 days. Smith was charged with the murders on February 11th. He was then transported to Franklin County Jail, where he was held without bail. The defense argued that Smith did not intend to kill During or Morelli, but that he reacted in a moment of panic and confusion. The prosecutors argued that Smith purposely killed the victims, who he knew were police officers, so that he wouldn't go back to jail. The jury recommended Smith be sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Smith was admitted to the Warren Correctional Institution on December 5, 2019, where he is serving his sentences. That was it for today's video. We hope you like it. If you want to see some more interesting videos, then make sure to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button.